So while some in the Boston sports scene might let you down in their second appearance this week, Celtics playing basketball and wearing green. God, what a sucky loss that was. I will not here Friday. And I say that because you are not going to get me for 2 times a week, much more for the next couple of months. We're heading into the dead period. You will get full breakdowns on OTAs, minicamp, projections, roster thoughts, all of that stuff, all of the intel, all the breakdowns coming up. It's just going to be once a week for the next couple of months per my agreement here with CLNS, which has been fantastic. Now that and the Celtics bashing is out of the way, I am here to tell you a couple of things. One, we are going to talk about Drake Maye and his fit in this new offense. I spent a lot of time this week outside of the Garden looking at Alex Van Pelt's offense in Cleveland, something I had already done, but really, you get the basics down. Let's dive into the nuance. And specifically what he did with Joe Flacco, which I want to be clear, Drake Maye obviously is not cement-footed 39-year-old gray beard Joe Flacco, but he is someone similarly armed with a cannon on his right shoulder who is going to be able to bring to life the deepest attacking offense in the NFL last year. Let me repeat that. The Cleveland Browns with Joe Flacco tried to cover more yards through the air on pass attempts than any other offense in the league. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to get to a lot of mailbag questions for you, including some folks last week who didn't get their questions answered. Emily, Joe, there's another podcast that's asking questions from their own account. You guys are all going to get your answers, plus the folks who asked this week, every single question answered. So the housekeeping is out of the way. It'll be once a week moving forward. We're going to talk Drake Maye. The last thing is this. Again, recording here Friday. Rookie minicamp is underway right now as I record. All the rookies, including May, arrived yesterday, acclimated. Hey, how are you? Classroom equipment, playbook, all this different stuff in person. They're practicing today along with the undrafted free agents, along with other players who were just invited on a tryout basis. I think the Patriots have one roster spot open right now. If not, they have 0. And they might have to shuffle things around if some of these guys impress them. And then they're going to practice Saturday. It'll be short. It'll be a practice in front of the media, about an hour long. Gerard Mayo is going to speak, in my understanding, is you'll have 5 or 6 rookies speak after that. Just a word of caution. You are as excited about seeing Drake Maye and Javon Baker and Jalen Polk as I am. But, we cannot, again, forget the context of its rookie minicamp with no pads and practicing against dudes who are here on a tryout basis. So Drake Maye might look great. He might look like crap. Javon Baker might drop 2 passes. He could catch 200 touchdowns. I largely don't care at this point. It will be good to make an introduction. This is a handshake. It could be hard. It could be soft. But if you're sitting down in an interview or on a date, first of all, hopefully you're not shaking hands at the start of the date. Maybe your date's not mine. But what matters is what happens after that. The deeper you get into this relationship, the more time you spend, the more things that you learn. Handshake's important. That's all this is going to be. And that might even be overstating it. So it'll be good to learn. It'll be good to see. Just remember, this is a non-padded practice, only rookies, and then players who, as far as the front office feels, stink worse than the guys that they drafted. That's that. Okay, let's talk about Drake Maye. I've spent a lot of time talking about Drake Maye. I'm going to spend more time talking about Drake Maye. He's the quarterback of the Patriots. It's the arm. It's the mobility. It's the talent. It's the fact that he's 21. That's all why he's here. He is also a really great fit for this Alex Van Pelt offense, which doesn't have me, I would say, overly excited or enthusiastic or confident from an X's and O standpoint as far as the nuance, but in getting to understand, again, beyond the basics of what he wants to do, Maye is an unbelievable fit for what Cleveland was doing last year, specifically with Flacco and sometimes even earlier, because the defining characteristic of this offense is bombs away. Play action bootlegs, standard play action, other movement throws, stretching the sideline with 3-level concepts, short flat route, a deep out, and then either a post corner, a corner, or just a go. That will allow Drake to not only have simplified reads, but reads that get the ball way the bleep downfield. And so what I found not only is just he's going to be a fit for this, able to run boots, throw across his body, be able to throw deep, but the way that the Browns attacked certain corners, certain defenders, putting them in high-low, you think of a linebacker dropping in zone, right? An underneath shallow cross, and then a dig going behind him. Very basic stuff. The way that they attack different defenses structurally was more impressive to me, honestly, than when I first did a deep dive into Alex Van Pelt, just looking at the bones of the offense. And so, for example, and I wrote about this Thursday, this is why we're talking about it here today. Not only am I confident Maye is going to be a fit, it doesn't mean he's going to thrive immediately, but they'll run, as we've all seen now for decades, these outside zone handoffs. The offensive line's in unison going one way. The running back is going right behind them. You saw the Colts do this with Peyton Manning for years and years against the Patriots. And then he pulls the ball, and Peyton would usually just stand there because he wasn't a bootleg quarterback. But Maye is going to be able to run a bootleg, a naked, going back the other way with no blocking to help him. And so in these cases, sometimes he's just throwing a straight go ball against certain corners, like an example I cited in my breakdown of the BostonHerald.com. Please go find this. I tweeted it out as well. They'll run a double move. So it looks like he's running a go. Then he makes a quick step to the sideline. And then it becomes an out and up. So you're trying to get the corner to bite, thinking maybe this is a comeback throw. And in addition to, you're changing those routes, whether it's the corner, whether it's the post, whether it's the go, the out and up, they'll give him options underneath. And so again, simplified reads that play to his strengths and work with stuff that we know, again, for decades with all the Shanahan offenses, not talking Kyle, but Mike, that can, as long as everyone else obviously meets him with their performance around him, we don't know how that's going to go. I'm just very encouraged by the fit. And there's a lot more to go where it could be bootlegs. It could be standard play action throws where you have Patriots and Josh McDaniels did this all the time. A post on one side. So think about, receiver goes 15, 18 yards upfield, breaks at a 45-degree angle over the middle. On the opposite side, same deal. Except at 15 to 18 yards, he's running a dig. So you have a 45-degree angle and then a 90-degree angle. And I know the folks on YouTube right now are going, just show us the clip. I got to be honest, for a guy who's now covering the Patriots and the Celtics and now doing this as a side hustle, and I love it, and this has been fulfilling, and we're going to get better, and we're going to do more things. I didn't have the time right now to draw up this play. So bear with me in my hand gestures as I make a 45-degree angle and a right angle 90-degree with a dig coming underneath the post. The example I just gave about the linebacker having to deal with the shallow cross and the dig behind it, it's the same idea up top with the safety. The Browns did that on the first play of a big win at Houston that basically locked them up a playoff spot. And that's stuff that can work with Drake Maye right away. Max protection, you're about the offensive line. You're worried, are they going to be able to hold up? Just throw 7 guys, 8 guys in pass protection. Send the 2 downfield. Javon Baker or Jalen Polk or Tyquan Thornton, if you're an eternal optimist, downfield to go get that ball. KJ Osborne. And let him just make the simple read of the single high safety. Is he taking the dig that's coming up 90 degrees over the middle of the field, or will it be the post? Because Drake Maye can make those throws. That's why he was drafted. And those are the things you can play to while he works on his rhythm, his footwork, some of the quick game stuff. And the Browns sprinkled in some RPOs and, easy quick game stuff that I think, again, is easily defined. I'm just really encouraged for the time that I did get to spend this week diving deep into those concepts about what he's going to be able to do. Easily, clearly defined windows, deep throws, going bombs away. That's what the kid can do. And I think that's what they're going to have him do here in this new offense. All right, let's get to your mailbag questions. Grand Jordanian is asking, quote, say the Pats see this as a 2 offseason rebuild. Instead of reaching for a developmental left tackle in 2024, they say we'll pick top 10 in 2025 and we'll grab a day 1 franchise left tackle then. Move Caden Wallace to right tackle, Mike Onwenu to right guard. With center responsibilities in AVP scheme, maybe they give Cole Strange to be a center in 2025. Thoughts? I appreciate the detail. I feel like this is a question I would have sent in if I was on the other side of this podcast because, there's a lot of moving parts. You're trying to look ahead, and this is how the front offices are really working, right? What's our plan now? What do we want to do next, and how do we get there and beyond? I would say overall this is optimistic. First of all, because the franchise left tackle, there very well may be one. And, for example, this year it was Joe Alt, right? A guy that everyone agreed, draft, plug and play, can't miss, day 1, just set it and forget it. The draft is still, with guys like that, a hit or miss proposition, which isn't to say, again, I argued for Drake Maye to be drafted, even though the odds of him hitting as a franchise quarterback are below 50. You just have to take that chance. What I would say is Caden going back to right tackle, we don't know if that's going to be a success. Cole Strange doesn't have any center experience in the NFL. And if Mike Onwenu just got paid $20 million, and some guards are getting paid close to that, it wasn't exactly 20, but it was in the neighborhood, $20 million per year for Onwenu, just keep him at right tackle. So for me, what I would say I agree with here is that it's a multi-offseason rebuild. There is some positional flexibility that they're going to play with. We don't know where those pieces are going to land, and neither do they. But I do love the part about this that says, as far as the roster looks right now, if they don't sign one, and offensive tackles, especially starters, are really not traded for in the NFL, you at least plan now to draft one day one or day two. That's my favorite part about this. I just think all of those things happening as you described them and hitting Strange to center, Caden Wallace back to right tackle after he started at left tackle in the NFL, and this day one rookie stepping in immediately, it's not all going to happen like that. And half of it might not happen. But I think part of this is well thought out and just a little bit too hopeful. With Prizepicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app, where right now you can win up to 100 times your money with as few as 4 correct picks with basketball, hockey, and other sports on Prizepicks. And I'll tell you, look, I like Prizepicks for baseball too. The Red Sox just started up. They're playing the Mariners, the A's. I put a little money down and I got a lot more money back. So download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. I did the same. Again, download the app today. Use code CLNS at Prizepicks for a first deposit match up to $100, and you can do the same. Basketball, hockey, and baseball. We got a lot to do until the draft, and you can find it all at Prizepicks. Proud Black Matt. I love this question. Who impresses the most in preseason but doesn't make the team? Let's call this the Austin Carr Memorial Award. Okay. The year before I got on the beat, oh my God, Austin Carr is going to make the team. He's catching all these passes. He's doing, he's the star of the preseason. We had, it's going to be a throwback. A running back. He was late rounder undrafted at Ole Miss, my first year in 2018. He scored a touchdown in the opener. This is going to kill me, so I'm going to let it go now. That did, everyone hyped up immediately because of what Matt is saying. So who's going to be that person this year? Well, first of all, I would say the percentage that this player even exists is lower than most years, right? Because the roster is not as talented. So the Patriots can't afford to be like, hey, Austin Carr, we know you impressed and you might not be that good, but we just can't take that chance because we have to play, what's left of Juju instead. We have to roll the dice with third year. If you surprise, you play well, you practice well, you're probably making the team for the Patriots. That all said, my answer would be Jalen Reagor, because I think the players that are, stay in our memory a little bit or get more attention in the preseason, right? Then Kayshon Boutte takes a simple slant against very soft coverage in Green Bay, second week of preseason last year, to the house touchdown. Everyone's going, oh my God, there he is, a 6-round receiver. And to your credit, he made the team. He locked up his job. I think it was a commentary on the rest of the depth chart, but that's an example. Guys who make a splash in the preseason, receivers who score touchdowns, defensive backs who gamble and get interceptions, people who contribute on special teams. Jalen Reagor fits 2 out of those 3 boxes. Okay, he's got the speed. I just don't think there's a good reason to mess around with him anymore. I don't think he makes the team, but if he scored a kick return touchdown or he wins a 50-50 ball and pulls away for a touchdown, everyone's going, oh my God, they finally did it. This team got the best out of Jalen Reagor. He scored a touchdown last year against Buffalo. I can't make the case. I don't see it. So that would be my top nominee. Sneaky, I don't want to say dark horse. We're all very familiar with him. Bailey Zappi, not because they would cut him if he had a good preseason, but because his trade stock at that point would be as high as it's been probably since the end of this past season. And at that point, you just deal him. You stick with Joe Milton and Drake Maye, Jacoby Brissett, and move on. Waterboys, quote, do you have any idea why the Crafts refuse to give the title of general manager? How does it benefit the team and or the Crafts by not giving out that title? Good question. This is one that I think we all asked of the Belichick operation too, right? Like, why don't you just call Brian Flores the coordinator? He's calling the plays. He's leading the meetings. Why don't you just do it? This is frustrating. It seems to be counterintuitive and counterproductive. And, at that point, Flores, 18, the only year he held that title, no one really cared. They had come off of 2 straight Super Bowls. They were going to a third. But it becomes more of an issue when things are bad. So I would say that's the first part of this. The Crafts are struggling right now, certainly from an optics standpoint. They're not doing good business, I think, with this sham of a GM search. And so we question these things more. We care about them more because there's not winning to just deodorize the whole operation. What I would say is, my understanding is that they see the general manager title, the position, the way it's heard and it's seen and it's viewed and accepted as this all-powerful being over football operations. And they don't want that. And if they do want that, as they did with Belichick, you are the head coach first. And that's good enough. It's understood. He's the de facto GM over time. Whether that's right or wrong, you couldn't just say, hey, the GM reports to ownership equally as a head coach will, which is going to be the setup between Mayo, the head coach, and presumably Eliot Wolf is his executive vice president of player personnel, which again, I, as someone who's going to have to type out that title a lot, would prefer just GM, but it's not going to happen. That belief or their attitude towards this, that's the best way to put it. Their attitude is that if someone's going to report equally as a head coach, we don't want that title to seem more important. And that's it. Fuad, are there any names within the front office whose contracts are running out that we could expect to leave the team? And could we see an overhaul if and when Wolf becomes EVP? I like EVP. Thanks as always. So here's the thing. You've heard me report, write, tweet, say in this podcast that there are multiple players, maybe they're players in the front office, executives, scouts whose contracts are up at the end of this month. And they are sitting here waiting, hands clasped, twiddling their thumbs going, do I know who my boss is? Do I know if I'm even going to be able to stay? Because they don't right now. And that's frustrating for them, dealing with their livelihoods and, of course, their families. What I would say is if I started sharing those names publicly on this podcast, that violates some trust in a way that I've been able to speak with people in that front office. And when I say generally that there are people who exist like that, it opens up the pool of people who might have told me that. But these are trusted sources, people who I've built relationships with, and listing them off would not do that any good. That said, people in the front office talk, people in the coaching staff talk. They know this about one another, who's up and who's not. What I would just say is, as specific as I'm willing to get on this, is that the range of positions, if you think about a scale of, like a hierarchy, right, within the front office, there are people at the top, there are people in the middle, there are people at the bottom from a personnel standpoint whose contracts are up at the end of this month. So yes, there are people, and there are people within other teams who have asked me, hey, who are these guys' names? So I'm not just holding out on you. And I told them, look, if you want to know, go ask them, but I'm not here to tell you because that was not information specifically volunteered to me that I was allowed to move forward with publicly. I can generalize, as I have and will tell you now, but that's as specific as I can go. They're near the top, they're in the middle of the front office, and they're near the bottom. And will they overhaul? I don't think they'll totally overhaul the front office. I think they're going to keep people in place. It's a younger front office. You think about a guy like Cam Williams, who's I think around 30, director of college scouting, ex-football player. He's local to New England, played at Ohio State. He's risen up the ranks really quickly. Even Matt Groh has. I mean, he's not a young guy, but his inexperience is, you would describe his experience as inexperience at this point, given his trajectory and how quickly he climbed up the ladder. I think there's talent to develop there. And if Eliot trusts the people around him in those roles, maybe they do stick. But guys who've been around longer than, say, Cam Williams, who I think is in his early 30s, might be just 30 and that's it, or 29. Those guys who say, okay, my resume is longer, I can go somewhere else and get an executive title. Those might be the people to leave, but I don't know. We'll find out. Mike, thinking about new kickoff rules. Is Marcus Jones still the return guy? Or does a player like Jaheim Bell, 7th round tight end out of Florida State, fit the mold? I like your thinking, Mike. And I think if I'm reading your question right, this is your kind of jumping off point here was Belichick's comment during the draft, or maybe it was on McAfee. It was before the draft. And it was a great point. Still the greatest coach of all time. Very smart. Smarter than me, obviously. And he made the point that on special teams, the way that you have this set up now, the focus is going to be less on speed. Dudes who can run down the length of the battlefield and get there first. It'll be more on size. That when you get there, because there's less room to cover, you need to be able to block and destroy blocks. And Jaheim Bell is obviously a lot bigger, stronger than Marcus Jones. What I would say is, though, even though he's not lined up immediately with those blockers and would-be tacklers and coverage players in this new kickoff rule, again, guys standing up, I think it's 10 yards across from each other, and that's it. The returner is behind them. You need a combination of short area quickness and long speed. How can I get through the hole and then take off? And I think Marcus Jones is still your guy. There's a little bit of vision. It's in a shorter area like you might have for a running back, starting in the backfield and then goes, reads the line and makes a cut. I wouldn't want Jaheim Bell at running back. That's the simplest way I can put this. You would still prefer a Marcus Jones who might be a little bit too small, but he's not going to get 20 carries. He might get 4 or 5 kickoff returns. And him being smaller, honestly, in my opinion, and we'll see how this goes in camp. Maybe I'm totally wrong. Maybe Jeremy Springer, new special teams coordinator, just goes, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And he puts Jaheim Bell back there. But I see it as, I want a smaller guy in that hole, be able to avoid tacklers, be able to move quickly in space, because it's really going to be one cut and go on these returns now, not weaving through, looking and hitting your long speed right as you get into the action, where obviously you wouldn't want Jaheim Bell because he runs 4.6. Marcus Jones does not. But Marcus Jones' quickness and size, I think, is still an advantage in the way that you wouldn't want a bigger return man. IG77. If Wolf is named the EVP, Executive Vice President of Player Personnel, as everyone expects, would you expect Alonzo Highsmith to take over Wolf's former role of Director of Scouting? Good question. I have no idea. I think at this point, when we talk about titles and the frustration over the GM part, and why doesn't Wolf have it yet? Why don't you just call him the GM? What is the whole point of this? We start to conflate the significance of the title with the significance of the job, right? Like, what are you doing? This is Belichick's point all along. If he's doing coordinator jobs, that matters much more than what I call him in the media guide. Now, there are reasons titles are more important than he ever gave voice to, but setting that aside, whatever Alonzo Highsmith's title is, he is going to be in Eliot Wolf's inner circle as someone with decades of college scouting experience, and he will use that experience to help the Patriots in the draft process. And at some point, cross over and do some more pro scouting stuff. But whether he's the director of scouting, whether he's a senior personnel executive, whether he's a college scouting director, it doesn't matter. The man is a made man. He's in the inner circle. He's going to be helping. And to me, I don't know how effective he'll be in this role. People I've talked to, like Alonzo, they weren't as effusive in their praise as they were for Eliot when I wrote that profile of him last month. But I would just say I wouldn't focus that much on the title. And if you do, sure, director of scouting absolutely could be in there, because that means you have a little bit of your hands in pro scouting and in college. And Highsmith has been around long enough to be able to help and do that, even if most of his background is in college. Okay, so the draft is behind us, but that means the best is still ahead of us. I'm talking playoff games, Celtics, Bruins, and I'll be there covering the Celtics with the Herald. We lost our guy, Steve Hewitt, which brings me to my real point. You want to come with? Because you can find Celtics playoff tickets, lowest price guaranteed at Gametime, an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets easier and faster than ever. Prices on Gametime actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. You can find killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, including those pesky fees, views from your seat, and always, always, always the lowest price guarantee at Gametime, which takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. And honestly, I've used Gametime for other games as well. I'm a couple T-stops away from the Sox. If I want to go to a home game, check out on Gametime, wait outside the gates. It starts, prices go down, boom, I'm in the park 5 minutes later with the lowest price guaranteed. So you can do this with the Celtics coming up in the second round. We all know they're going to the Eastern Conference Finals, and then hopefully the finals. And you can be there right with them. Last minute ticket deals, flash deals, zone deals, all again, lowest price guarantee, even event cancellation protection, job loss protection, all at Gametime. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets or MLB tickets, all with the Gametime app. Download the Gametime app today. Create a free account and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, the account is free. Download Gametime, create an account, and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. That's Gametime today. Last minute tickets tomorrow, and the lowest price guaranteed. Here comes the question from the podcast. Pyramid the podcast is asking, quote, "Hey, Andrew, love the pot, love the Pats, love the beer. No beer today, but there will be some this weekend. B's and C's are making me nervous. I've been looking at this year as a reset year, which encapsulates this year's drafts and trades and next year's free agents and next year's draft. Thus, the draft process is really 14 to 16 picks, so they don't need more picks. Please discuss." It's hitting me now. We might have done this last week. Again, there were a couple questions I didn't get to. If I did, I'll make this quick. If I didn't, we're still going to go quick for the people who listened last week to me answer this question. What I would say is you always want more picks. And that is whether you are the Patriots of old, the Patriots of today, or the Patriots of tomorrow. Because when you have these draft picks, again, you're throwing darts. You don't know, unless you're great at darts, where they're going to land. But I know my chances of hitting 20 or a bullseye or that outer ring of the bullseye, which might be part of the bullseye. Can you tell I've never really played darts? will be higher of me hitting any of those areas the more that I throw. And so you want those picks. If I bring them in and then we're 7th-round picks and they're on the 90-man roster and they don't cut it in camp, whatever. But if they do hit, if they're an undrafted free agent, and I don't have to tell you, Malcolm Butler, J.C. Jackson, Jonathan Jones, David Andrews, these aren't draft picks, but you bring them in anyway because the payoff is such that it's worth your time. It's worth the investment. So what I would say is, yes, the idea that this is a reset year, a rebuild year, and then next year you're really going to start to build on this. And the draft is, 2 drafts. I would argue it's really going to be 3 drafts that are going to make or break this next era. This year's, next year's, in 2026. But you just want more picks because we're all loving up on Javon Baker right now, right? Some of the media. I will say my expectations are there's a super high ceiling. There's also a super low floor. We don't know. We're all going to find out. But I don't want to bank on this year's draft and just next year's draft to fix it because maybe you miss or maybe you have horrible injury luck and Drake Maye, God forbid, tears his ACL in August and you have to wait another year. Get more picks. Build in some more, protect yourself, insulate yourself against that risk. Okay. Manage it with more picks, more players who might be able to build your roster, whether it's for this season, next year, or the year after. So give me all the picks. Joe, if Maye is quote unquote ready, but the O-line is not, do you see them holding him back to protect him both physically and confidence wise? This is going to be, it already has been, right? A talking point around the whole Drake Maye experience that we're about to step into. He's stepping into right now. Again, they're practicing down there in Foxboro. Not allowed to the media today, by the way. That's why we're not all down there. I'll just refer to what Devin McCourty said in this podcast last week. Someone who had spoken to Drake Maye, sat in his office, chatted with Matthew Slater. They want Maye to have a stable environment. If it's unstable, and it's at least a close competition between him and Jacoby Brissett this summer, that might be the instance where I've said, hey, the tie is going to go to the kid. It's going to go to the runner. It's going to go to Drake Maye. They might pull back on that. But what is their definition of unstable versus stable? If it's just one spot and they say, oh, we can scheme around left tackle. We can, again, RPO, quick game, run at it, boot the opposite way, double team, slide, chip, whatever, all of these solutions, we can make it work. Fine. It doesn't mean it will work, but the coaches talk themselves into stuff all of the time. Okay. In the same way you and I do in other parts of our lives, they just do it on Sundays and we all find out whether they were right or wrong. So I do see that they could hold him back. I just don't know what the threshold is of that, right? Does it have to be a complete disaster if Maye performs well for them to go, look, you won the starting job head to head with Jacoby Brissett, but we can't risk running you out there, as you said, at the chance that we might ruin you. Their definition of this will ruin him might be much different from mine. It might be different from yours. We don't know, and we'll find out. Hopefully we don't find out, right? Things just go well. Guys are healthy. They perform. I'm not saying, I want them to win every single game next year. It's just to say that you get a chance to find out. If things are somewhere in the middle or lean towards worst case scenario, we might not find out anything. Maye might not play. And even if he does, he's in an environment that has us going like we were after year 2 of Mac Jones being like, was that him or was that on the supporting cast? And I got to tell you, having done that podcast, having had those conversations, that gets tiresome. That sucks. So I want to find out one way or another. Last one. This is from Emily. Definitely didn't do this question last week. Quote, overall, I would give the draft a B. Hey, me too. They definitely improved the offense, and I'm thrilled with Maye. A little disappointed about not getting legit left tackle or true number 1. Any insights on why they passed an A.D. Mitchell, Texas receiver who went to the Colts? Aside from what we've already heard, how bad could he be that he went 52nd overall? So a couple things on this. One, I would tell you, actually, it's going to be 3 things. It wasn't just the Patriots who passed an A.D. Mitchell at 37 and at 34, right? They trade back, deal with the Chargers, come up, get Lad McConkey. The Patriots take Polk. Teams passing him at 38. They passing him at 40. They passing him at 42 and 45 and 46 and 47 and 50 and 51 until 52. And the Colts celebrated. Like Chris Ballard, who I've said before, might be the most overrated GM in the league. The Colts have not won a division title since he's been there. 7 years. And so the Colts are happy. And hopefully, again, A.D. Mitchell hits. We all reach our potential and stay healthy. But to me, that should tell you something. It wasn't just the Patriots passed on him. It was at least half of the league did twice, including the first round. And Mitchell was not beloved by, I would say, the analytics community that you could see on Twitter as far as his yards per route run, um, yards per snap, right? And Texas had other weapons. Again, these stats do not fully encapsulate any player's production or ability or potential, but painting that along with questions about his health, and as someone who has diabetes, not an expert, stepping away from this immediately, but as a factor for teams in weighing, well, do we want to just take Jalen Polk? Do we want to take Ladd McConkey or roll the dice in this kid who's, we all saw at the combine, big, fast, incredibly acrobatic and athletic, but what's the long-term upside here? And he was also a player that you bet on upside. And so I don't know how the interviews went. I think that is definitely a part that doesn't get discussed, and partly rightfully so, right? Like if I'm throwing out, oh, there's character issues, and I'm not saying this about Mitchell, I better be able to tell you why. There better be a police report. There better be examples of coaches who can explain he didn't show up to weightlift or do all these things, not these nebulous, vague, this guy's kind of a jerk when I don't know him. Okay. The same as I would hope anyone would do for someone that you don't really know. So we don't say that. But what I would say is when a player slips a little bit more than expected, that might be the reason why. Because folks like me in the media or teams want to stay quiet about their impression of the kid's character. Again, I don't know if that's Mitchell, but when you take into consideration his deeper numbers, again, that I just cited from college, right? Not the raw stuff. How efficient are you when we throw you the ball, when you're just on the field? And those numbers are way behind a lot of other receivers in this draft. Some health questions and maybe, possibly, maybe not, character concerns. That would all add up to me to why he went, again, not just top 40, didn't even go top 50, but went 52. And that wasn't the Patriots making that decision. It was a series of other teams. That would explain it to me more than a single bad interview or a single bad analytics profile or even a bad medical, because teams disagree on that stuff all the time. But when it's all of those things together, that to me would explain why he fell, I don't know, let's say conservatively 10 spots, but probably closer to 15 or 20. And that's the best I got. But I get it. I know why people liked him. I know why people wanted to take that swing. And I know why Chris Ballard was so excited, because his highlights are as good as any receivers in the draft. But the consistency, the production, the deeper numbers, and possibly some off-field stuff, I don't know. Didn't stack up, and that was evident. Okay, so we will see you once a week moving forward. I would say close to training camp. When we do see you each week, there will be guests. We will have mailbags. We will bring back the mail fan. This is the first episode. I want to say close to 3 months. We haven't done that. And I want to thank you for donating to Boston Children's Hospital, listening, watching, just being a part of this, because we've raised thousands of dollars in this podcast for kids who are sick and the people that help them. And I write a lot of stories. I do a lot of podcasts. I do some TV, but that is something that I am most proud of, I would say, over the last 12 months. And that's not possible without you. So thank you. We will see you next week. Take it easy. Enjoy the weekend. And I can't wait.